Hi, this is Miss White, and welcome to Unit 2. Our first lesson in Unit 2 is distinguishing between fiction and nonfiction. Okay, so you probably, at this point, can distinguish between the two, but I'm going to take you to the next level today. Here's our learning target. Today I will compare the features of fiction and nonfiction so that I can understand how they can be alike and how they can be different. I'll know I've got it when I can distinguish between fact and fiction. Before we go any further, I want you to write about your background knowledge. What do you think the difference between fiction and nonfiction is? Part of our learning target was the word feature. This is an academic language vocabulary word. It means a characteristic of something, often something kind of special. So like the girl's distinctive feature is her curly red hair. My distinctive feature is are my clear glasses. I don't know. You can always pick something that it's like what someone would draw if they were making a cartoon can be someone's distinctive feature. There's another meaning of it too, and this is how we're talking about it in this lesson. It is something that's part of the way that the text, what's written, is written. So, for example, one feature of this text is underlined keywords. So you can see that in this, a lot of things are underlined. That tells me it's probably nonfiction because fiction doesn't really do that. Sometimes, but very rarely. Nonfiction has more special features like that. Okay. Here's an easy way to remember the difference. Fiction equals fake. Of course, it can seem realistic because a good writer is going to write from experience and observation so they can make a main character that seems like someone you know. And that's good. But that person is not actually real. Like, hopefully they didn't just write about their friend and pretend it was fiction. Although some writers do say they do that. Nonfiction is not fake. Fiction, fake. Nonfiction, not fake. Non means not. So if you get non-fat yogurt, that means no fat in the yogurt. If you are non-accepting, that means you don't accept things. So whenever you see non, just it means not. Alright, of course I know you know this. Beware. Sometimes something looks like nonfiction, seems like nonfiction, but it doesn't include real facts. Sometimes when I see something online that seems totally unbelievable, I will look it up on this website, Snopes.com. It's a website where people check kind of like internet rumors or just like articles that don't seem quite right. If something seems kind of like unbelievable, it probably isn't real. Like if you're like, what? I can't believe this. Like when we were watching the scary stories and you're like, could this be real? Could this actually be real? Probably not. If you're like thinking it's weird, it seems kind of extreme, it's probably not real. So for example, there was a TikTok going around that all McDonald's drink cups hold the same amount of liquid. Snopes investigated this, and if you go to their website, you'll see that they proved that it was false. So I trust them to kind of tell me whether certain things that might seem like nonfiction actually are. Okay. The cool thing about fiction and nonfiction is with lots of genres, you can have the fiction version and the nonfiction version. So if you really like mysteries, there's a fiction version of that and a nonfiction version. The thing to watch out for is, do you see how this one, the girl who is supposed to die, has a photograph on the cover? That's fiction. I think sometimes people think when there's a photograph it means it's nonfiction, and when it has like a drawing it means it's fiction, but obviously that's not true. One trick I can teach you is often nonfiction will have a subtitle. So this thing that I'm pointing at right now. So it will have a title, Amelia Lost, and then a smaller title, the life and disappearance of Amelia Earhart. That happens a lot in nonfiction, and that's kind of like a good clue that it's nonfiction. Okay, history. This is the same thing. If you're into history, you can read the fiction version, historical fiction, or the nonfiction version. And sometimes they have a lot in common, but they're different because nonfiction is just facts, and historical fiction can be based on facts, but the author is also creating some details that are just from their mind. So again, you can kind of see, oh, on the right side, in nonfiction, all of these have subtitles. True stories of 6 extraordinary children. Untold story of a 13-year-old running revolutionary. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's journey to justice. Like, they kind of have that clue often to let you know, okay, this is a true story, untold story, blah, blah, blah. They'll like give it away. Okay, last one that we're gonna look at, the similarities and differences. Okay, so say you really like science. The fiction of that is science fiction. This is like when writers take an idea from science and they're like, what if we did have AI that could actually like really like talk, walk around like humans do? What if we had like personal flying cars, like something that's a science idea that hasn't happened yet? And then nonfiction, obviously it's just facts. So you can see on these that they'll say like experiments, exploring the brain. I feel like this is kind of hard. This is not one of the harder ones to distinguish between. Like, this looks kind of magical almost, and this is like science. Okay, here are the main differences. With fiction, you always have character. You always have setting, like a strong sense of place, and you always have plot. This is the way the story works with the beginning, middle, and end, and that every story has conflict, or like a problem and solution. Usually fiction uses more descriptive writing techniques, so they will use figurative language, like she could soar like an eagle, and they'll use sensory details. They'll use a little more descriptive writing usually, but nonfiction also can do that. Nonfiction has to be totally factual. Fiction often has facts, but nonfiction can't have anything made up. You can often read nonfiction out of order. Like, if you have an encyclopedia of animals and you just want to read the panda part, go ahead. That's totally fine. Some nonfiction you should read from the beginning to the end, but not all. You can read to just find out information or learn. It can be written more plainly, like just the facts, and it can use more text features like underlining, bolding, and photos. Here's what they have in common. Aw, fiction and nonfiction besties, so cute. They do have a lot in common. A lot of writers of fiction and nonfiction both use descriptive writing because it makes it more fun to read. They also want to entertain you. I mean, maybe you have a nonfiction thing, like you're just reading about how to fix a car. Yeah, it's not trying to entertain you, but if you're reading about sharks, they probably want you to be entertained. They're not going to just be like, sharks are 10 feet long or whatever. They want to give you something that's going to be fun. They can both teach you something. They can have strong characters. You don't really call it a character in nonfiction, but like if it's a biography, it's gonna have a strong like main person, and they can both have a setting, but nonfiction doesn't have to. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for watching.